Hello and welcome to today's webinar. The topic, your SaaS apps are the future. Why is your backup in the past? This event is brought to you in partnership with our friends at Druva. Thanks so much for joining us on this webinar presented by Actual Tech Media. My name is David Davis and I'll be serving as the moderator and host of today's event. Before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know about the format of the webinar here. First off, of course, we always want these events to be educational. We encourage your questions here in the questions pane of your audience console. I see many of you have already said good afternoon and hello from across the United States and around the world. And of course, we welcome those comments and we always welcome your feedback. But we also want your technical questions about today's topic. I know many of you out there are protecting, SaaS apps, protecting your critical business applications. It's your responsibility. And at the same time, you have malicious attackers trying to get in every day and steal that data and take it for ransom, exfiltrate that data. So you've got a lot of challenges, I'm sure, on your plate. And this webinar is here to help you solve those challenges. So we encourage your questions there in the questions pane of your audience console. We will be doing a live Q&A session here with our expert presenter, who I'll be introducing you to in just a moment. But first, just a few more things. I want to call your attention to the handouts tab. That's where you'll find a link to get a demo of the Druva data protection solution. There's a link there for a free trial as well, and also the Druva TCO calculator. So make sure that you check out those resources in the handouts tab. And then finally, at the end of the webinar today, I'll be announcing the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card door prize. If you're watching this on demand, of course, that drawing would have already occurred. The prize terms can be found there in the handouts tab. And then in addition, we also have our best question prize for an additional Amazon $50 gift card. That means that you have to ask a question to be entered into the prize drawing for that special gift card prize and still meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. All right, so with our housekeeping information out of the way, I'm excited now to welcome today's expert presenter. Always great to have on Mr. W. Curtis Preston, Chief Technical Evangelist at Druva. Hey, Curtis, it's great to have you back.
Thanks, David.
Well, take it away, Curtis.
All right, thanks. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening if you happen to be joining us from elsewhere. I wanted to talk about SaaS apps. So we're talking about things like Microsoft 365, G Suite, Salesforce, Slack, things like that. And I think it's not, I don't think I'm going out on a limb here to say that SaaS apps are the future, right? In that literally, I don't know, everything that I'm using these days is some kind of SaaS app. In fact, I just, learned and have started using a new SaaS app the other day that is basically, really changing the way I edit my podcasts. And that's just the way things are building. It's just so much easier to consume a SaaS app. And so my question is, if the future of your data center is SaaS, why is your backup still back in the past? So let's just talk about one of the downsides, pretty much the only downsides of SaaS is that your data is sitting there, if it's something like a Microsoft 365 or something, I would say even more important, something like Salesforce, it is it is an attack point, right? And there are, a number of stats that talk about the number of ransomware attacks, the direct attacks against SaaS applications, and in addition to the vulnerabilities from attacks, there is, so first, just talk about data loss. The same old data loss, basically, I deleted a thing. I deleted an email. I deleted a file that I was working on. And some of the SaaS apps have solutions for those, some do not. And then there's ransomware. Then there's still litigation and also compliance one of the concerns is making sure that you're not storing the wrong kind of data in your SaaS application. And when we look at those, with data loss, there are and malicious deletion. And sometimes, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, sometimes it can actually be the tools that some people think of as data protection tools that can actually delete the data, which I know sounds crazy. It sounds crazy to me, but that is the reality. And unfortunately, ransomware is continuing to be a bigger and bigger threat, and especially with what's going on over in Europe right now. And there is, at least one, the Conti ransomware group has specifically said that, they if the US or NATO attacks Russia from an electronic perspective, they will retaliate. So there is a real concern that the ransomware, as bad as it is right now, that ransomware will actually get worse. And, I've already talked about litigation and non-compliance. These things, not complying with an EDiscovery request can cost your company millions of dollars, and not being compliant to a particular regulation can do the same. So these are not things that you can easily ignore. A good solution addresses all of those, not just backup, not just recovery, but also things like EDiscovery and compliance. And you may be thinking that, well, gee, my SaaS app includes backup, and let me just put it right on the table. No, it doesn't. And anything that you see that looks like backup isn't really backup. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So with Microsoft does say that you're responsible for your backup. Salesforce says they recommend using a third-party backup solution. And there's a good Gartner app here. Assuming SaaS applications don't require backup is dangerous. So here's what I want to ask. I've spent, for those of you not familiar with me, I've been in the data protection business almost 30 years now. I've built some of the world's largest backup systems. And so, I know a thing or two about what a data center based backup system looks like. So the first thing that you have to worry about if you're doing an on-premises backup system to backup SaaS, the first thing is sizing it. You know how many users are in your Microsoft 365, but do you know how big that is? Because if you're building an on-premises backup system, you need to know the gigabytes and the terabytes of the size of the solution. Then over time, you're going to have to manage that capacity. You're going to have to grow it over time. And then I'd say the biggest concern right now is that you're going to have to manage the security of that system. It's a constant attack point, because not only are ransomware, bad actors attacking your data center, they are now specifically going after the backups, and specifically the Conti ransomware group which is the largest and I'm just going to say meanest of all of these bad actors. They are specifically targeting certain backup products. And then if you're going to be backing up and restoring SaaS, you have to worry about the bandwidth both coming into your data center and then going out of your data center. When you do a restore, you want the biggest, baddest pipe that you can possibly get, but you're still only going to get whatever it is, whatever bandwidth is that you've paid for. You're also limited to the speed of whatever that backup system is. And because backup, as long as I've been in the data center, backup has never really driven the business. It's not, people don't see it as a business value add. It doesn't make the company faster. It doesn't make the company more money. It's really just this giant insurance policy. Because of that, you you have the backups don't get the money that they need, and so you end up getting not as fast of a system that you want. And when you go to do a restore, you're limited to that the speed of that system. Excuse me. And then those backups can be infected by ransomware, and also the accidental or malicious deletion via the backup app. So not only can your backups be attacked via a crawling ransomware attack, meaning that it's attacking the files directly. These sophisticated attackers are also harvesting user IDs, and they're then using it to use the backup application and actually delete the backup apps via the backup application. And most backup applications have zero protection against the backup administrators themselves. So if you appear to be a backup administrator, you can delete all the backups that you want. A software as a service solution doesn't have any of those challenges. You don't need to size it. You only need to know how many users you're backing up. There's no capacity management to worry about. The security is handled for you. You get cloud to cloud bandwidth. So it's essentially unlimited bandwidth. And there's no speed limits. And I'd like to mention that when it's time to do a restore, you get the entire power of the cloud at your disposal without having to pay for it. And then also it looks like I copied over from the other side. That's actually from the that last bullet point is actually from the other side. They actually, I misspoke. It cannot be encrypted or deleted by either ransomware or the backup admin. There are protections built in so that if you go in and if you accidentally or a ransomware attacker goes in and deletes the backups, there are protections or attempts to delete the backups. There are protections in there to stop them. So what we're talking about here is a Druva Cloud platform. It's powered by AWS, meaning our technology runs in AWS. It protects a number of things. Today, we're talking about SaaS services. They also protect endpoints, also protects hybrid workloads. Having a real tough time with my voice today. I apologize. If you compare what Druva does to the rest of the world, you can see a lot of holes with other solutions, and Druva provides a complete solution. So not only is the data isolated against ransomware, it's also purpose-built backup and granular restore. You've got comprehensive EDiscovery built into it. You've got compliance monitoring built into it. It supports a number of the solutions out there. And by the way, you probably have multiple SaaS solutions, and you having a single backup solution that can back up all the SaaS solutions is much preferred to having multiple solutions, and Druva provides that for you. And again, you get the SaaS architecture, and then a comprehensive security suite, including GovRamp or GovCloud and FedRamp. So let's just talk about some of the things that you can do with the Druva Cloud platform. So the first that I want to talk about is backup, and that's where everything in Druva, starts. And it's a SaaS app, just like pick your favorite app, right? You, just like every other SaaS app, you go to a website, and that's what you need to do to administer the system. You don't need to worry about the back end infrastructure. So think about it. When you use 365, when you G Suite, Salesforce, you don't have any knowledge of or any concern about the back end infrastructure behind the app you're using. And that's the simplicity of using a SaaS app for backup and recovery. So when you use this, you get one admin console that you can manage it anywhere you are. You configure the policies. There is, you can back up key SaaS data as well as endpoints and data center. Very resilient. You can monitor everything. You can integrate it with your SIM or SOAR tool. And again, it's cloud to cloud API, right? So there's no impact to your WAN. There's no impact to, you don't need a VPN to make the backup secure. And there are configuration optimizations to deal with one of the challenges with backing up SaaS apps, which is the API throttling. So we've been there. We've done this for several years. We understand theyese challenges, and we've worked around that. All you have to do is authenticate us to the solution, that you're planning on backing up, and then we can and just pick the number of users. You can either say all the users, or you can select certain users, and then after that, everything is just completely automatic. So when we go to do restore, you can either, this is due to data deletion or corruption or ransomware attack. You can either, it supports self-service restore, meaning that the actual end user of the application, so the actual person using Microsoft 365, can do their own restores, or you can run it through IT. And you can restore back to any point in time. And this is when you compare it to the things that are built into the native tools that are built into the applications like 365 and G Suite. What you can sometimes do is you can sometimes put all of the emails back from a particular time period. So all of the emails that I've received for the last 30 days. But there isn't a functionality built into that that say restore my inbox to the way it looked yesterday. And but here you can go back to any point in time. You can do individual files or a bulk restore, and you can obviously restore in place, or you can restore it to a different device. So you can grab a file out of 365, put it on your laptop. And I want to mention that one of the things that those who don't think you need to back up 365, or again, I keep saying 365, it's just that it's certainly one of the most popular ones, is that, well, gee, if 365 is down, what good is your backup? Well, it's a lot of good. So what you're actually able to do is to go in to directly to the Druva console and download any files that you're currently working on. You can also get access to any emails that you're working on. It's not an email application, but if you can get crucial data out of there, restore it to a PSD file, open that up, and you can actually continue to work while your SaaS app is down. And then here's the next one that is, I think, especially if you live in the United States, EDiscovery is a very expensive thing to do. So the first thing is that, we're already collecting all the data and the metadata. We're able to provide a centralized automated legal hold. So simply select a user and select legal hold, and it automatically puts that user on legal hold. Then also you can do, if you want to hand off the actual EDiscovery to a third-party EDiscovery tool, we support that, but we support pre-culling so that you can select a smaller subset of the data, so that you don't hand your entire backup over to the EDiscovery tool, because those tend to be based on the number of records or the size of the data. And so you can do pre-culling using federated search and send a smaller amount of data to your EDiscovery tool. And you can preserve departing employees' data, and as I already mentioned, upload EDiscovery tools, and you do all of this within the same tool. So you get a single tool that does backup and recovery, and then also EDiscovery. There's also proactive compliance. If you can identify certain types of data that should not be stored in your system, let me just use one example from the United States. Social Security number should never be stored in an Excel spreadsheet, for example. Well, if you can create a regular expression to identify a Social Security number, which is actually pretty easy to do, the backup system can look at all of the data as it's being backed up. This is happening I'll mention for privacy reasons, this is happening on the front end. So at the very beginning of the backup process, we see the data obviously in plain text where it's unencrypted. We're looking at it as a backup app. We have to see it unencrypted to back it up. So that's the chance that we get to actually look at the data and say, all right, here's a spreadsheet. Steve has been storing Social Security numbers for some reason, or what appear to be Social Security numbers in a spreadsheet. We send off an alert. We notify you, and then you have a choice. Obviously, you can go talk to Steve, and we can then delete that both from the backups as well as the place where it was originally created. And There are a number of out of the box, templates that you can also customize. And also there are rules to address things like right to access and right to be forgotten. You can search and act on sensitive data. And then you can centrally manage this across all of the workloads. So if you're backing up, it's very common for users to use Microsoft 365 and Salesforce, for example. You can do search and management across both of those workloads with a single tool. As I was just referring to, this idea of federated metadata search, doing a global metadata search across all workloads. And this is for EDiscovery and forensic applications, also for security and compliance reasons. You can then download all of that and hand that over to other tools, or just download it directly and use it. I mentioned this earlier, and that was the idea of preserved users. This happens for a number of reasons, that you don't want the user to continue to take up a license in Microsoft 365 or Salesforce or G Suite, but you want to preserve the data for that user. That's a one button click in Druva. You simply select that account and then specify to preserve that user. So let's take a look at a couple of the different solutions that we have. So the first is Microsoft 365, formerly known as Office 365. We do Exchange Online, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. And you get a consistent experience across all of the Microsoft apps, right? You configure your backup policies one time. You tell us what you want to back up, who you want to back up. Do you want to do just Exchange? Do you want to do SharePoint? You decide, right? And again, this save costs on, if you're archiving a user, you save costs. And also we do optimize the throttling issues. We deal with the issues of, especially that first backup of Microsoft 365. We just handle that automatically. You don't have to worry about that. We do this. We do the same thing for Salesforce. So we back up, all of the objects and records, metadata, et cetera. And again, you can either do restore an entire object, or restore records within that object. And it is a native Salesforce app, and you can work with the Druva tool within Salesforce. And you can also do a cross-org restore, and you can either do sandbox production or productions to sandbox. By the way, when you restore to sandbox, you can do data masking, so that you can play with production data in the sandbox without having to open up production data entirely within the sandbox, right? And then also for G Suite, we do Gmail, Google Drive, and shared drives. Again, with the same thing, with consistent experience across all of the applications. We can, you set it one time, and then you get all of the same benefits that I already mentioned for Microsoft 365. This is a very different experience than most people are used to in backup. What you normally have to do is as I mentioned earlier, you have to first size the environment. And for SaaS apps, that's actually a real challenge to figure out how big things are. Then you need to design the backup system, decide what kind of servers, what kind of storage you're going to buy. You need to install that OS. You need to harden that OS. You need to download your application. Even if you're buying an appliance, so they're dealing with the security and the OS part of it, you still need to size it, right? So sizing a backup system for backing up SaaS apps can be quite a challenge. So you're doing all of that in advance, and then you get to configure it. With Druva, you agree with us how many users you're going to be backing up on a particular SaaS app. Again, we also support laptops and other mobile devices, and we also support data center. Setup is all very similar. So with SaaS apps, you simply do a single authorization and authentication of our app to your app, and then you're deployed, and you select the users that you need to select, and then say go, right? So you're looking at 10 to 15 minutes, and you get a single dashboard across all workloads and use cases, whether or not you're backing up the SaaS apps, endpoints, or data center, and also we protect cloud workloads like AWS. And another really important thing to mention is that you get these no-touch feature updates. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're used to 365, Salesforce, etc., they come out with new features all the time, and you just get to use them. That's the way this is. Imagine that with your backup system, because typically you have to upgrade your backup server in order to get access to new features. And trust me, I know there's nothing more terrifying than upgrading your backup server. It's your last line of defense. So imagine never having to upgrade a backup server again. Just you always get access to all of the new features because all of the upgrades and everything is happening, on your behalf. 2 times a month, we come out with new features and they just automatically show up. The other thing is that it scales on demand, both up and down. So if you decide, I'll give you a perfect example. We had a customer that was backing up several thousand endpoints. And they came to us and they said, well, our CIO is very concerned about ransomware. So he wants to back up all the endpoints. And we said, well, how many is that? He said, well, it's 100,000 or so. No problem. It's simply a license change. All of the stuff in the back end happens automatically. The system automatically grew to meet their needs. And it's because we're using a cloud native architecture, because we're using S3 as the backup. We're not using disks and volumes, right? We're using object storage. Because we're using DynamoDB as our metadata database, that automatically grows as much as we need it to grow, which means it automatically grows for you. And then here's the craziest thing. If your needs change the opposite way, where you sell off a portion of the company or you decide to no longer back up this part of your company, it also scales down. And that's the thing I think that you're not going to find with any other backup app, because you always buy the capacity in advance. And then once you've purchased it, it's yours. But with us, if you just change your mind and you decide, let's say, you change your corporate direction and you decide you only want to back up a certain number of people within your organization, we would just redistribute those licenses for you, right? You're only charged each month for the number of users that you're backing up or the number of gigabytes if you're backing up in the data center. So it automatically scales to meet your needs up and down. Just a quick list of some of the applications that we integrate with. I mentioned about integrating with Legal Hold earlier. Xterra is a good example of that. So it streamlines the entire process end to end. Also integrating with Okta, I think it's a great way to do single sign-on and MFA. And also integrating with FireEye for ransomware detection. So you can attend a demo. There are demos that we do quite often. You can also get a free trial, and by clicking any of those links there. And then also, I just want to mention, for those of you that are unfamiliar with my work, I've recently written my latest book for O'Reilly, which is called Modern Data Protection. You can find it anywhere those books are sold. It's just called Modern Data Protection. I published it in May. So with that, I will turn things over to David for Q&A.
Excellent presentation. Thank you so much, Curtis. I do appreciate that. I know the audience does as well. We've got a lot of great questions coming in. I want to remind everyone out there, if you have a question, now is the time to get it in. I've been sorting and trying to organize these, the many questions that have come in here during your presentation, Curtis. I guess I'll just go ahead and start with this one from Bradford. He's asking if Druva is typically considered cost effective for small businesses around 10 to 50 employees.
So basically we price based on the number of users that we're backing up. So unlike a lot of systems where you have to spend a lot of money to build a backup system to then use, we just price based on the number of users. So the price, it's a few dollars a month for each user. So, it's very affordable for small and large companies alike.
Absolutely. And I would think, that's especially true with a SaaS-based data protection solution like you were talking about. You don't have to buy a backup server, with a bunch of storage and install an operating system and all that kind of stuff. This is just ready to go. Another good question here, they're asking what backup or what cloud providers does Druva currently support?
So it depends on the question. So if they're asking who we support backing up, so we support native backup within AWS. We are, working on adding Azure very soon, and but we can, if you need to back up an application, our data center app uses source side global deduplication, which means that it's very friendly for VMs. So we can back up a VM in any cloud anywhere by putting our agent in. And we have quite a few Azure customers, GCP customers, who are backing up things like SQL Server and Oracle by using our VM agent. But native support we currently have for AWS. Sometimes when people ask, they're asking if we support storing our backups in another cloud, and the answer to that today is no. We run entirely in AWS, and people say, well, with a competing solution, I can store my data in Azure, and if that's important to you, unfortunately, we will not be the solution for you. But I would argue to you, as long as we meet your requirements, and by us storing our data in AWS doesn't adversely affect you, I would argue that we're no different than Microsoft 365 or Salesforce, in that Salesforce happens to run in AWS, Microsoft 365, for obvious reasons, happens to run in Azure, and you don't really care, right? You just use Salesforce. We're like that. So from a where your backup stored perspective, that will be in S3 in AWS today.
Okay, great point. Here's an interesting question from Simon, who wants to know, he says that he's interested in using Druva, but what's the kind of migration like? If you have another backup application, let's say today, how would one go about making that jump?
Yeah, this is, like I said, I've been in backups for almost 30 years. This is the age-old question. There's never been a great answer to that question, right? Hopefully your backup solution, hopefully you are using it as an actual backup solution and not as an archive solution. And which means that basically you just need to age out your backups from that system. That we don't have the capabilities to import backups from other systems. And frankly, I don't know of any backup software that has that ability. You would simply phase out what you're doing there and just start using what we offer.
Excellent. Let's see, Rob is asking, what sort of options are there for the frequency of the backups, such as once a day, multiple times a day? Are there data retention settings for how long that data would be kept?
Absolutely. So it's sub hour. I don't remember exactly with the different SaaS apps and endpoints. I know in some places we actually go down to like 5 minutes, but it's definitely sub 1 hour. So you can specify to back up once a day, multiple times a day, once an hour, multiple times an hour, etc. Different apps support different numbers, and that has to do somewhat with the API limitations of that application. But it is sub 1 hour.
Excellent.
And there was also the question about.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was also the question about retention, and obviously, yes, you can specify retention, and we also offer long-term retention in less expensive storage. So that's something for people that want to store data for much longer periods of time. We offer that, and that saves you cost if you're going to store data for long term.
Yeah, that sounds like a great option, because the same person was also asking about unlimited retention, just keeping data indefinitely, and I'm sure
yes, we do offer that.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Bradford is asking about ways to calculate he's asking about the typical RPO or RTO supported by Druva.
That is so. The RPO is going to be driven by the backup frequency that I mentioned earlier, which is going to be sub 1 hour. RTO is going to be driven. It's not going to be driven by us. It's going to be driven by the app. So we have essentially the unlimited power of the cloud, and we can restore as fast as 365, Salesforce, or G Suite will allow us. And unfortunately, I should have a better answer to that question. I should have, I know that the reality is that most of the restores that we do are relatively small. So where an RTO would come into play would be, I'm restoring the entire Microsoft 365 account. Honestly, we don't have to do that very often for obvious reasons. We have done it. I'm aware of a large 365 restore that happened just a couple of weeks ago with a very large, well-known company that got attacked by ransomware. They were attacked. Their endpoints were attacked, and 365 was attacked, and we were able to restore them in relatively short period of time. Unfortunately, I don't have a specific number for you. And I know that the hardest part of restoring your laptops was wiping the laptops in the first place, right? So they would basically deactivate the laptops, wipe the laptops, and then restore all the data, including all of the personalization settings.
And then another question they're asking about, is Druva a full OpEx solution, or am I required to purchase on-prem hardware?
No, sir. Yes, no. So yes, it is a full OpEx solution, meaning the only thing you pay for, if we're talking about SaaS apps, the only thing you pay for is seats, right? So if you have 100 people in 365, Salesforce, or G Suite, you're paying for 100 licenses. And you pay for licenses in advance, and then you deploy them as you need them. And, it's sort of a, purchasing credit system. So the beautiful thing is that if you overbuy, so compared to a regular backup system, most people over provision their backup system. They buy much more storage, much more compute than they need, because it's a pain in the butt and they have to do it every 3 to 5 years. So they buy way more than they need in the beginning, and most of it goes unused most of the time. There is none of that with us. You never pay for something that you don't use. So you buy a certain number of users, and then you deploy those users. If at the end of the year you didn't deploy all those users, you can roll those users into the next year. If you ran out of users before you purchased a year at a time, most people buy a year or 2 years at a time. And if you run out of users early, we just renew your contract early. The really important thing is that you never pay for something that you don't that you're not actually using. And so the second half of this, do I need to put on-prem appliance? No. What came in my head is that annoying no song on TikTok. You know the one I'm talking about? There's that annoying no. Anyway, I'm not going to sing it, but it's just the most annoying song in ever. But
I don't know that one, but I'm betting the audience does.
Consider yourself lucky.
I do. You mentioned integration for detecting ransomware, and there's a question here. They're asking if Druva has the capability to detect malware or ransomware in the backup data.
So yes, what we typically, so I'm going to put a disclaimer here. We are not a front-end data security solution. We think you should have one of those. There are a number of those tools, and actually, by the way, my podcast, Restored All Podcasts, I've got a great episode coming out Monday on. It's the middle of March, so people are going to watch this on demand, and it's a covering of a great Reddit thread that talks about all of the things that you should be doing in advance. You should be doing all of those things. What we can detect is that you have been infected. So, and specifically that the ransomware product has been deployed. So what we have is we have anomalous data, detection. So we can see the activity that a ransomware product does, right? We can see the files have been deleted, or we can see significant files that have been deleted, or that they've been encrypted. We can see that in the tool, immediately notify you and ask you what you want to do. So we are able to do that. And then also, during the restore, we have this advanced ransomware recovery feature that allows you, if you have a system that has been infected over a long time, so it got infected and then it did a slow encryption process. So sometimes the ransomware products know that there are products like ours that are watching for them, and so they tried to do things slowly. If it's able to do that and get past us, so let's say that happened for a week, we're actually able to specify, a time period where we say start here and end there, restore only unencrypted files, and also scan for the malware. You can actually give us the signature of the malware that infected you, and we'll look specifically for that and make sure that we don't restore that so that we don't reinfect your system.
Nice, very nice. And I think I know the answer to this one already because we did a whole webinar on this. Can Druva air gap or make the backup data immutable?
Yes. So they are immutable and cannot be attacked directly by ransomware. I mentioned earlier, what about the backup admin? So there's a feature that we have now, and then we have a feature that's coming soon. So the feature that we have now, and it was actually used at that customer that I mentioned, the one that a couple of weeks ago, where if someone does get access, right, if they steal your credentials, they could go in and theoretically delete some of your backups. So there's a big but there. So the first is that we will detect that anomalous activity, just like I mentioned earlier, and stop that. Second, if it doesn't get detected, we have a user configurable amount of time, which is, think of it as a recycle bin for your backups. So even if you go in as an authorized person and delete some backups, we can easily restore those backups back for you. And then second, what's coming is an option on the backup that, and this is coming around the corner, where basically if you select that option, even an authorized administrator will not be able to delete the backups. But I think what we have is already pretty strong, and stronger than what most other backup apps have, which is nothing, right? And basically the backup, if you're a backup administrator, you have all power within the system, unfortunately.
Right. What about flexibility related to where the backup data is stored? They're asking, can I put a SLA in place or a geolocation configuration in place to keep that backup data in a specific AWS region?
Yes. So we support, I think it's 15 AWS regions today. When you are configuring your backups, one of those configuration options is, where do you want this backup data stored? It's very common for someone on, say, the East Coast to back up their data to the West Coast, but it's also very common for them to want to keep it more local and to keep it within a, for data governance reasons, keep it within Canada or keep it within the EU, et cetera. We support all of that.
Okay. And I want to bring up this slide for everyone out there, just to remind you, while we take a couple more questions, the links to attend a demo or try out Druva for yourself with a free trial, or learn more with the TCO calculator. Those are all clickable right here on the screen, and they're also available there in the handouts tab if you want to click on those and try this out for yourself. Let's see, another question here. They want to know, I've read online that I can just use Microsoft 365 retention periods for backup. Is that really true?
Yeah, I think they mean retention policies. So here's the thing. Retention policies aren't backup. what a retention policy is in Microsoft 365. So Microsoft 365, G Suite, Salesforce, they're all the same in that they are a database behind a UI, right? And when you delete an email in Microsoft 365, you don't actually delete it. What you do is you set a flag, because that email, that file, is just a record in the database. So what you do is you set the flag that that email is deleted. The UI then makes it look like it's been deleted. It actually hasn't gone anywhere. It's literally sitting in the same place it was before. What the retention policy says is, okay, all emails, all SharePoint files, all OneDrive files, they have to be there for 30 days. So you pick it, right? You decide, I want all emails, and it's probably the best thing that Microsoft has from a it's better than the sort of the recycle bin where they decide how long you're going to keep it. It's better than that. But here's the problem. There's a couple of problems with retention periods. The first is that they are definitely complicated. It's a 30-page manual just to configure this one feature. And I say pages, but it's pages on it on a website. It's not, nobody prints their manuals anymore, but it's a complicated feature. And then finally, or secondly, the feature can be you have the choice where you can well, let me just say, the concern is that someone can overwrite that. It's just another feature in 365. If your 365 administrator credentials are compromised, they can go in and reduce that 30 days down to 0 days, and then poof, everything's gone. The feature to go against that is that you can enable sort of a worm feature of the 365 policies, and it will not allow even an administrator to delete the retention policies. The problem is no one uses that, and there are reasons that I don't have time to go into, but no one uses that worm feature, mainly for cost reasons, because when they turn it on, they find out that it explodes their storage, etc. But so what most people do is they turn it on, but they don't enable the worm feature. So two things about the retention policies. One is when you turn it on, if you're past the recycle bin and you need files, it's not a restore wizard. It's an EDiscovery wizard. It doesn't understand the concept of folders. Again, it can show you all the files, all the emails that you received in the last 90 days, but it can't actually put them back the way they looked yesterday. It just simply is not capable of doing that. It doesn't understand what folders is, or doesn't understand the concept of point in time. And then the other is that retention policies, if you don't enable that worm feature, which no one enables, can actually be just as dangerous. So a perfect example, a large company, KPMG, they accidentally deleted 150,000 employees' chats because they were trying out a different retention policy. They were just trying to delete one person, and so they create a retention policy with a retention of 0, and they were supposed to move that one person into that retention policy, but instead they moved everybody into that retention policy, and they deleted everybody's private chats in the entire company with 0 backup, right? Wow. That's why, those reasons are why retention policies are not backup. It's first off, it's not a backup because it hasn't been copied anywhere. It's just keeping the data. Yeah. It's just preventing it from being deleted. A backup, by definition, means it's been copied somewhere, and retention policies is not that, right? So, so there you go. I'll step down from my soapbox.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's an important point. What about, Paul is asking, can Druva protect NAS shares?
Yes. So we do that via a proxy. So you pick one or more proxies in your data center. You install our NAS proxy on that, and then specify what needs to be backed up. We also have Smart Scan built into that, so that it, especially for large amounts of data that doesn't change very much, it can significantly increase the backup speed.
Excellent. I know you mentioned self-service here. They're asking if there are configurations around self-service where you can, kind of say who can restore data and
Yes.
what they can restore.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Not everybody wants to enable that feature. So yes, we allow you to do what they're asking for.
Nice. So let's see. I know we're starting to run out of time here. We've covered most, I think, of all the questions out there. Unless there's any that catch your eye, Curtis. I think a great way to wrap up would be just to kind of talk about here. If folks want to try out Druva for themselves, they go to the free trial. What's it take to try out Druva?
It's not a, I'll say what it's not. It's not a self-service, free trial experience. You do need to talk to somebody to get an idea of the type of environment that you'd be using it in. And then they set you up with a free trial. But it literally takes minutes, not hours, because again, there's nothing to install. You just need a user ID and password, and then, domain, admin privileges on that, the SaaS service that you plan to back up. So it literally takes, we're not exaggerating when we say 15 minutes. To me, that's like the high end.
Excellent. Yeah, sounds super easy to do. The link again is right there in the handouts tab for everyone out there. I also like this video, Druva in 2 minutes, that's on the homepage over at druva.com. That way you can kind of very quickly see Druva in action. The architecture diagram is right there on the homepage as well. So tons of great resources over at druva.com, as well as the customer case studies, all the different customers that Druva has been protecting and who they have helped, recover in many cases, as I know you were talking about, Curtis. So really great webinar. I learned a lot on the event today, Curtis. It's always great to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks to our friends over at Druva for joining us. I'll leave up the resources right there on the screen while I announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card. This is going out to Con Hollis from Michigan. Congratulations, Con Hollis from Michigan. And we'll also reach out to our best question prize winner as well. Thank you to Druva. Thank you to the audience. Thank you again, Curtis. I hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.